started. Great. Good morning. My name is Haley Lyons, and I am the chair of the Oregon Board of Accountancy. I am calling this public meeting of the State of Oregon Board of Accountancy to order. Today is Thursday, June 4th, 2026, and it is 8:33 a.m., 33 minutes on schedule. This meeting is being held in person at the board offices on 200 Hawthorne Avenue Southeast, Suite D450, Salem, Oregon 97301. This meeting is being recorded. Zoom participation is also enabled. If you are participating in this meeting by Zoom, please be sure to mute your microphone and unmute only when you are when you are called upon to speak. Please do not use the chat room for any discussions. Should any technical issues arise, the meeting will be paused until they are resolved. I will now take a roll call of members and guests. I will first take a roll call of those in the room, and then we'll ask you to identify yourself if you are participating by phone or by Zoom.
Shelley Ostrom, Deputy Director, present in office.
Megan Hartley, board member, present in office.
Jeremiah Leopard, board staff in office.
Tanya Moffett, board member in office.
Jason Robinson, board treasurer in office.
Jason Orr, board member in office.
Angie Hunt, board legal counsel in office.
Rob Valdivia, vice chair in office.
Martin Petioni, executive director in office.
Quinn Stoddard, board staff in office.
Sherry McPherson, OSCPA gas, CBE. Where did that come from?
CBE. And then let's go to the our Zoom, Logan.
Logan Steele, board member, present via Zoom.
Awesome. Jared.
Jared Holm, OSCPA guest.
Thank you. Heidi.
Heidi Steiner, DAS CHR Client Agency Manager.
Thank
By
you.
Zoom.
Sherry.
Good morning, Sherry Lauer, DAS CHRO Client Agency Manager in support of Heidi.
So Cynthia.
Cynthia Killingsworth, Portland Community College guest.
Thank you. Brittany.
Brittany Hornung, OAIA board member and guest.
Awesome. And do we have anybody else that I didn't catch? All right. Thanks, everybody. Item 2, agenda review and approval. Has everyone had a chance to review the agenda? And are there any motions for changes to that agenda?
So, Madam Chair, could I ask respectfully for a motion to approve the agenda with an amendment of adding a work session item 9F to discuss the Oregon requirement that students complete their bachelor's are able to provide a final transcript before applying for the CPA exam. And just to briefly explain, at the request of Dr. Steele, our board member.
Jason Robinson, so moved.
Thank you.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Great. All those in favor of approving the agenda as amended? Oh, we're doing a roll call. Megan?
Megan Hartley. Yay.
Aye.
Aye. Yay. Aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orr, aye. Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan?
Logan Steele, aye.
Great. Haley Lyons, aye. Right. Agenda is approved as amended. Okay. Well, yeah. So we do need to adjourn the public session of the board to enter executive session under authority of ORS 192.660(2) to conduct the evaluation of the executive director. The time is now 8:37 a.m. Like it's like old timey, like I'm gonna dictate my bills. You dictate the bills, please? Okay. I got a moment of love, like, sorry.
It's interesting that I don't right now.
I know, it's interesting. Okay, I am now resuming public session of the Board of Accountancy on June 4th, 2026 at 9:03 a.m. We do need to conduct another roll call.
Not for this one.
We do not. The same people that were here at the beginning of the meeting are here again. Those people have not changed. Okay, but I do need a motion to adopt the 360 review documents for the executive director performance review.
Jason Orm, Jason Orm, I move that we accept the 360 documents, both of them as presented.
Jason Robinson, I'll second.
Awesome, great. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, I. Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, motion passes.
For the record, fair warning to staff. We're in for a series of Jason motions and Jason seconds. You are going to have to distinguish it very clearly with middle initials.
No, they're gonna remember to say their names.
Full names, we got full names.
Thank you, Heidi and Sherry. Appreciate your time. You're of course welcome to stay. And
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
okay, we are on to agenda item 4, review of the public board summary. Has everyone had a chance to review these 3 public summaries provided? We don't need a motion on any of those, but if you have any feedback on any inaccuracies, please speak up. Hearing none. We're going to move on to public comment. Are there any members of the public who wish to comment? Please raise your hand in the room or use the Zoom raise hand feature. If I call on you for comment, you will be permitted to address the board for a maximum of 3 minutes, and staff will unmute you so you can speak. As chair, I reserve the right to end your comment early and have staff mute you if your comment does not pertain to the authority given to this board by the legislature to regulate the CPA profession and public accountancy firms in this state.
Maybe get to her items.
I know, where is that a new business?
It's under. Hang on a second.
Cynthia, I want to make sure that we get to the item that you brought up in case you want to talk about it. So I'm looking to see where it's at, so you don't have to stay
I
around.
think it's 9E. I think that's
Okay.
somehow misnumbered.
Okay, great. Maybe we'll do that. I'd like to move 9E. It's part of the board work session, whatever.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Okay, never mind. Okay, any members of the public wish to comment at this time? Seeing that, great. Sherry, report from the OSCPA.
Thank you very much. Just thinking about some of our recent activities, what's coming up, of course, you're very well aware because it's CPE reporting season here for as well. So CPE programming is in full swing. On May 7th, we had Circle of Excellence. Thank you to Martin and Haley for being on the program. It was just really an exciting evening. I mean, looking over and seeing all of the scholarship recipients, and that was just, a portion of those who received scholarships. For the Society's CPA scholarships, we had 64 recipients, which, comes with the generosity of members. And the Accounting Access, which is the scholarship that came out of the board's Senate Bill 796 last year, 84 scholarships. So thank you to everybody that worked on the pipeline too. Cynthia, I was thinking about you, seeing you online here too. And that was really nice. So out of the 84, there were 3 scholarships that were community college specific, and then 9 that were transferring from community college to university. So it was just such an exciting day. I have to say, at the end of the Ed Foundation meeting, I may have said this at the last meeting, but just with the generosity of the CPA scholarship and then the Accounting Access, it was well over $444,000 that was awarded that day. And I thought, wow, that is a great day at work, everybody. So, and I've been hearing really wonderful things from scholarship recipients. And, so thank you again to the board for the many efforts, because, some of those comments are like, this has made such a difference to me. You just don't know. So thank you. And our board meeting is coming up on June 30th. And as far as we said, activities, AICPA Council was held mid-May. And so we were in attendance there, looking at national issues. Jared Hola, who is vice chair of the OSCPA board and board of accountancy and liaison, and I will be attending the upcoming NASPA Western Region meeting. So we're looking forward to that. That's always an interesting meeting. I really always like the legal update. It's something that you don't always hear every place else. So that's one of my favorite topics. So I'm looking forward to Jared hearing that. Jared, is there anything that you would like to chime in on?
No, that's a good summary.
Okay, thank you. That's it.
Thanks, Sherry.
Thank you.
Okay, report from OAIA, Brittany.
Hi. First I wanted to apologize. I'm not able to change my name, so sorry about that. But we are just coming out of tax season and we're kicking off CE season with a variety of topics and webinars. Those are all listed on our website. Our June fiscal year end is coming up and we have our annual meeting later this month. It'll be on June 11th at 3 p.m. over Zoom. So we encourage all members to attend. And that's pretty much it.
So, thank you. Okay, now we are moving into, anybody have any questions for either Sherry or Brittany? Okay. You guys are good about speaking up, but I also want to remind you that you have the opportunity to ask. Item 8, board work session. Now we're getting into it. So the first item is an update on the PE APS legislative concept drafting and the feedback that was received from TAC. Angie Martin, which one of you wants to take the lead?
Angie, can I kick it first to you? There's 2 documents that the board got for this agenda item. One is an updated draft that went beyond what we had at the time of the last board meeting, the last regular board meeting on January 29. And so you updated a draft in February on the concept that's in the folder. Is there anything that is okay to discuss in public session with respect to anything you want to share publicly about what went into that stage of the drafting process and kind of what went into that? Is there anything we need to discuss here? Because the board has the language, right? Is there anything contextually that you feel you want to share before we get into the policy discussion around the feedback from the Big Four?
Did you have a chance to chat with Haley before?
I have not on this. I mean, I have, but I don't think I've chatted on this topic. I'm blanking in all honesty.
Okay.
We did talk about the document and then the whole thing about whether we should do it in public or not in public.
Yeah, and I don't know where that ended up.
Public session.
Okay.
Yes.
I was like,
You're like, I'm not sure what I'm allowed to say.
yeah, right. So I think
We decided to keep it in public session.
right. So I think one of the things is that when we were drafting it, and one of the things the board talked about a lot and has talked about through this whole process is that looking to make sure that the language is written in a way that allows the board to pivot because APS is going to pivot. And so just making sure that we don't lock ourselves in the language that we do. If the language gets too specific, it's statutory, so you can't change and move as much as you can. And so looking at the way the board had sort of instructed me and looking at how we were writing it was like to have it, a lot of it end up in rules so that you can move it and change it as you might need to do to be as the structures of those businesses change and you can evolve with them. So that was why it was written in the way that it was written.
So folks, if I may, this is, I think, a great lead-in to really what is really ultimately a strategy discussion around this issue. So if you look at the second document,
reported it.
I don't know where that just came from.
It came,
I clicked the wrong button.
yeah, it's okay.
So if you look at the document that was provided by our representative to the to the Accounting Alliance, which is the name for the Big Four. And I think most of you know that we're in PwC territory. So I've been working with Marcus Rayner for a while, who ran our concept through the Gibson Dunn national law firm, which is the law firm that TAC uses, and essentially provided some feedback. And really what Angie outlined kind of summarizes kind of what the issue is here for us, right? It was very friendly feedback in a sense of, hey, we get what they're trying to do, but it could have these other consequences unless you get specific, right? But you also just heard the problem with getting specific, right? And ultimately, it's really kind of a board call around what's the strategy we want to pursue here, right? Because we need to keep people in the boat. And when I say in the boat, either in support or neutral on this bill, and not get too concerned about what may pop up in the session, and be responsive to stakeholder concerns, right? So really the discussion we need to have is there some openness to get to some level of additional specificity to address some of these issues and ask board counsel to work on that piece before we lose her for a while, starting in, I think, the beginning of July or end of June. And essentially feed that into the process? Or are we comfortable simply saying, yeah, we will address this, but we need to address it in rulemaking, and we can ask, for example, our Laws and Rules Committee to start developing a rules framework, which may or may not address those concerns, right? Because our outside stakeholders are rather aware that anything we do in rule can be undone in the future or changed in the future, right? So that's really the balancing act that we have here. The only other reference point that I can give you is that when you look at the bill that we've previously provided to the board, we've had this discussion around Oregon actually taking this leadership role nationally around private equity related legislation. And you may recall that there was a bill related to the medical profession that passed the legislature in 2025. And when you look at the enrolled bill, which we've given to you in prior packets, right, there's a fair amount of detail in that bill. It's a 10-page bill with a fair amount of detail around medical decision making and so on, which I think will influence on medical decision making and so on, which is, to me, a potential indicator that the legislature is not afraid of getting a little bit more detailed, right? That said, just because the legislature isn't afraid of it doesn't mean that it removes the risk that we may then have to run back to the legislature if we go the more detailed approach and say, well, we crafted this to get everybody on board, or at least not opposed, right? But we may then run the risk that 2 years, 4 years down the line, we may have to go back and change something. So that's really the question before us here, and where we wanted to check in and see what it is that you, number one, want to do and what you would like me to communicate back out. I was really grateful, and I'll just put that on the record, I was incredibly grateful that the Big Four were willing to kind of take what Angie had drafted and run it through their process, because what you see here in your package today, whether you realize it or not, is actually an enormous gift, because this is exactly the type of feedback that sometimes doesn't pop up until you're already in legislative session. So just the very fact that they're willing to work with us and give us that feedback and to do it now puts us in a much better position than trying to figure out if that feedback pops up, in a January hearing on the bill, right? So that's, just want to stay positive here, because this is ultimately, it's not an easy question, but it's not bad news. So since it's not an easy question, who wants to go first?
Jason or Jason.
I don't know, Megan, are you good if I put you on the spot a little bit, since you are also in one of the slightly larger firms? in this equation, right? And
Well, in terms of where I land and the answer of specificity versus more generic language.
Yeah.
I mean, it's tough because I'm in both, both spots. So I understand definitely the flexibility that we're all looking for from a board perspective, because I do think things are going to change and probably pretty quickly, and who knows where. But I mean, even here in board session, we've talked about the potential ramifications of too loose of language, or that people will look for loopholes or the risks that could bring. So all of that said, I don't know. I guess I would like to maybe go through the feedback in detail, just such that we could try to find ways where maybe being more specific carries less risk or more risk. Because I do think hopefully we could find sort of a middle ground, I guess.
And if we do that at the statutory level, if we're talking about going through that for the purposes of tweaking statutes, I'll be honest, we're going to need to do it pretty quickly, because there's only two ways we have a shot at the apple, process-wise, right? One is that we do it quickly enough that I can say to the legislative drafter, because actually what basically happened is because this is an agency request bill, agency request bills actually were all sent in the current drafting stage to Legislative Council last Friday. It's a mandated deadline, right? Now, that doesn't mean that Legislative Council actually has the time to start drafting any of this stuff. But what it does mean is that if we want to give feedback at the time when Legislative Council is still drafting the original bill, we're going to need to get through it today pretty quickly and kind of give some direction to essentially staff, really Angie, and saying, hey, can we draft some more specific language on this that we can bring back? And maybe, quite frankly, at that point, then have a special board meeting where we look at that language and say, can we get that into the process and get that in, right? That will be option one. The second process option, which has obvious implications, is to say, we can't work our way through that quickly. It's too much work. We're going to have to take more time, in which case the chances of us getting it into the original bill essentially go away. But essentially we can work on, if you will, an agreed upon amendment that is ready to go at the beginning of the process, where we have amendment language where we can walk into the process and say, we've worked, in the fall to develop these amendments that make the bill more specific to ensure that essentially we're ready to go with something that the board can embrace kind of at the beginning of the legislative process, right? It's obviously not quite as ideal, but it certainly means that we will be prepared and we can communicate out that we are working to address these concerns through an amendment, to this bill language. Those are essentially the two process options that we can put on the table. Because I think what I'm picking up here is some openness, which essentially takes option 3 off the table, potentially, depending on where the board lands, that says, oh, we're just going to go as is, we're not going to draft anything. We're just going to do it in rule, right? Because that's the third process option. So, but I appreciate, that feedback makes a lot of sense to me, because it reflects to me that there is no easy answer. There's no obvious right answer. And it will require some going through and figure out what rises to the level where we really do need to tweak further and where it's hands off.
Right.
Sorry, I have read all of the things. Does our current language point to the AICPA APS guidance at all?
I don't think so.
It doesn't.
I don't think so. I'm going to look at what the other document that's in the
the peak exposure graph and all of the responses, and then these things I'm keeping them all sort of separate.
Madam Chair, and just for thought, I like that second option better because I always like to be prepared if we're ever going to put something in front of legislation. I'd rather not rush it.
Mhm.
And I don't think not doing anything is.
Which was the be ready with an amendment?
Be ready with an amendment, yeah, and give us some time to work through it.
Mhm.
And essentially, can I embellish a little in saying that we should dedicate some work session time and some prep time for this in September? Or you want to do it at the LRC level first?
I think it would be best fit for that committee.
Agreed.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. This advice us a little bit of time.
It does, and the LRC has a meeting scheduled on June 22, where I could respectfully ask the current interim chair to make this a focal point of that meeting. And the other upside of June 22, which is a currently scheduled LRC meeting, is that Angie's still here.
The chair of the liaison
Sorry,
said the chair could pass that message.
I'm sorry, the interim chair of the committee,
Oh,
Dr. Johnson. We can ask him to take that on.
yes. Yeah, great. That'd be great.
Okay.
Madam Chair,
In September. Hopefully with some additional, so Angie, what I'm hoping is that if we do that at the LRC, you made some very hopeful, from my perspective, comments that you might have some time at the end of January, and not January, end of June, before you need to step out to potentially do this. So if that happens with essentially LRC feedback, I know you don't have a ton of time after you come back to get ready for a September board meeting, but what I'm hoping is that if you really do have time at the end of June, is that whatever you come up with, we could then use as a basis to bring to a work session at the September board meeting without, putting you under undue pressure after you come back.
When's the LRC? Is the 22nd?
Yes.
Because I just have a trial on the 17th, so, and a 3-day board meeting next week. So I will have the 18th and 19th. So I'm just going to say, that's not like, I will do what I can, but I'm just telling you, I will have two.
I don't think that the LRC will, I don't think that you can do much in the run up to the LRC. Because the LRC will get this and they will have to sort through where do we think specificity is valuable and where is it not. And my thought process was that you could take that feedback to say, hey, can I draft something before, I don't know exactly what the date is when you need to step out, but I'm just going to use June 30th. And then use that product as a basis for our work session in September.
Sounds good.
Does that work?
Yep.
With your schedule?
Yep.
Okay, awesome.
Great.
Madam Chair, question while we're still on this topic, for Martin.
Yes.
Several months ago, as we were talking about this, we had some other jurisdictions looking at us and scratching their heads and saying, you're doing this because? Are they still scratching their heads? Or are some of them going, okay, we're starting to see it, or are they just still scratching their heads?
I will know more about after the regionals.
Yeah.
Because that's quite frankly one of the reasons why I'm excited about needing to go to both the regionals this time with my NASBA hat on, is to have those conversations. I think there is still a great deal of mixture of worry about, are we the only state that's going to do this? Are we opening up to ownership that's not 51%, right? But there's also, I think, interest that is growing because there's also a growing realization that Oregon or not, regardless of what we do here, is that many of these APS constructs challenge the core notion that all jurisdictions agree on, which is that we need to regulate attest firms in a meaningful way. And there's a growing realization that that's going to be a little bit more challenging in those situations, which is not all APS PE situations, but quite a few of them, where the attest entity essentially has no staff. Right? And kind of what does that mean in terms of essentially only regulating the entity that is essentially hollowed out and not regulating the entity where really most of it is driven, including but not limited to, I think very open admission by AICPA itself that if you have an APS-PE construct, in most cases you cannot conduct peer review without cooperation by the PE-owned entity, which is not regulated by boards, right? So that, I think that realization is starting to drive interest into why we're doing this and why we're trying to maintain some level of regulatory oversight. But I certainly not going to paint a picture of people who are running and saying, oh, wow, what are we doing here? There's still a lot of weariness and quite frankly, by the boards to touch it at all.
Yeah.
At all. Not just Oregon, at all.
That's helpful. As I just had conversations, I had a conversation about this with some managing partners of firms from around the country, and just explaining the situation. And they kind of have the same reaction that we do. Well, wait a minute, why isn't something being done as far as regulation? Why aren't they? That doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not disagreeing with the direction. I'm just seeing if other people have started to look this way or don't know yet. Too early to tell.
We'll know more in
Thank you.
No more in September. Okay, do we need a motion or anything on any of that?
Well, I think we just effectively got direction to staff on the process. So I don't think we need anything else under item B. And I don't think that rises to the level of emotion unless council disagrees.
No, because we'll just take it back to the LRC and then hopefully they can put together, we can get something put together, come back to you to then decide if you even want it.
Okay, item C, update on longer term fiscal picture and need for fee increases and related stakeholder discussions. Martin.
Okay, I'll do a very brief background piece and then I'm gonna turn it over to Jason Robinson to help lead us through this. But in essence, what's happening here is that I started having discussions with both OSCPA and OAIA on the overall longer term picture. And there's two reasons for this. So first of all, just to catch everybody up on history, this board last fee increases done in 2015. It's been forever, right? And this board has two of the main fees that drive our revenue sit in statute. So that's the active CPA renewal fee and the firm renewal fee. Those sit in statute, and that's been kind of a long-standing construct where, quite frankly, industry has a bit of an interest in making sure that we can't just do whatever we want in a rule, but essentially have that piece sit in statute, right? What happened in 2015 was absolutely revolutionary. Because in essence, we went through an incredibly intense process with our stakeholders that resulted in what really is very rare, which is the agency did not propose the fee increase through the legislative agency request process and the legislative budget process, but actually industry put in the bill. And that was an incredibly popular thing that went over extremely well in the legislature and the governor's office. And part of what it was trying to do is essentially kick off the process of knowing that at a certain point, we're going to run out of steam with flat, less than C-based, flat set of fees since 2015. We don't have the ability to fiscally sustain this board forever. We're going to have to think about fee increases in the next couple of years, right? So effectively, I was trying to test the waters, and Sherry, I'm about to put you on the spot here a little bit, and Jarek. I was trying to test the waters as to, is there a level of interest by industry to potentially do what would be really unprecedented, which is to do this twice, right? Not just in 2015, but to actually have industry come in again and take leadership of this issue, right? So we started having these preliminary conversations, and I think that there was, and Sherry, stop me if it's an unfair summary, but it seemed like there was a slightly hilarious disconnect on why it is that I was having these conversations, because there seemed to be an assumption that I was going to try to ask the industry to take the fees out of statute, period, like entirely, which was very sweet. I'm pretty sure, Sherry, you remembered history in my initial worry. When I came in, because this was so unusual to have fees sit in statute, that I was really worried about this. So I was it was actually heartwarming to actually see that, right? But at the end of the day, what it meant is that we had a really productive discussion that wasn't just about, is industry willing to do it, but it's also about, are there ways for us legally and with language to have some language added to the statute that would allow whatever fee amount it is that we decide on in this bill, to be increased with some level of cap over time without having to come back to the legislature, whether indexed to CPI or some other version, right? So there were two follow-ups that happened from three. One is, Brittany, I don't know if you know this, but I did connect with OEIA and Amanda Fells right after that meeting, and essentially received a similar message that Amanda was willing to have that conversation with OEIA's board when OEIA meets next, and see if they're willing to essentially jump on an industry endorsed bill. That was follow-up one. Follow-up two is I called Angie, right? Because even though we're talking about this being developed on the industry side, I knew that legally the issue of allowing some version of automatic fee increases and doing that in statute is pretty complex legally. There are some do's and don'ts. And I do think we're going to need some help from DOJ, even if it doesn't become part of our bill, to make sure that we know exactly what our options are that would legally fly. So I had that conversation. And then the third one, and that's the reason why Jason Robinson looks a little pale, is that, Jason, you have an opportunity for glory here, before this board meeting.
Every time,
because one of the things that OSCPA came back with, and I was like, why did I not think of this? So they said, hey, Martin, if we're going to have a conversation on June 30th with our board about this stuff, we need specifics. And shockingly, he said, I think Jared said something very close to, we prefer to have numbers, right? So somehow I'd forgotten about the fact that CPAs like numbers. It was very valuable feedback, because essentially what it meant was I called Jason and basically said, can you work with Shelley and I to develop some specifics around what is it that we're really talking about when we're saying fee increases, right? And there's a fair amount of work that you don't have in your packets because it's been going on through yesterday. And I don't know if you want to just start there, but that's essentially the other piece. Those are the three follow-ups. So I'll stop there, and I don't know, Jason, if you can, if you're okay with taking it.
Can we bring that up with the board?
Yeah.
And share that when you send it to Quinn?
The spreadsheet,
Yeah.
I can get that emailed to Quinn and have him bring it up, because I think without that, it's going to be hard.
Yeah.
I mean, I could explain numbers, but.
Is there any concern of bringing forward the increase after we just gave away $1 million?
Yeah, there's a little bit.
Yeah.
The bigger concern is going to be the downturn in the economy and going forward with the fee increase.
Yeah. So it's a great question, and undoubtedly there will be some who will make that connection. There's really two pieces here. One is I have been very deliberate, including in the newsletter that just came out, for those of you that read all of our emails immediately. You don't have to raise your hand. That I made it very clear that this scholarship piece essentially was an opportunity to use money that was otherwise at risk of being swiped. So it's not like we would have $1 million in the bank if we had just decided to not do this, right? That it was always about, in part, about risk avoidance. The other piece here is, and you'll see this in a moment on the document you're about to get, is that the fee increase does not have to be tied to only one specific point in time, right? part of the decision we get to make is, do we want to wait as long as possible, right? So yes, address it in the 27 session because it would be nice to have some clarity on this, right? Because there's also, it would be nice to have some clarity on this and quite frankly, do it while we have the people and the relationships in place. But that still gives us options around effective dates. Because if we do nothing,
right now is, we had a large cash reserve in the past. We're gonna lose that very quickly.
We're using it up.
Yeah. So
So in that scenario, the models, the fees go from what to what?
basically, 1.5%, or it's times 1.5.
I don't know what they are now.
Yeah, they're all over the board. So there's 255 for your regular CPA license,
Okay.
all the way down to $50 for municipal renewals. So so you're increasing all of those by 55%-ish. Okay. That will give us a little bit of leeway and into the future. If we start the process now and we implement them at the beginning of the next biennium, then we will have about a $2 million reserve at the end of our 4 years. Ish.
What should our reserve be?
that's a really good question. So right now, under the current scenario, if we don't do fee increases at the end of the next biennium, I think we have a currently projected ending balance of right around $1 million, which is about a 6 months operating, 6 months operating reserve, right? That's very much on the low side of ending a biennium because we have cash flow issues because we don't have, we have our annual renewals.
For the end of this biennium?
No, we're talking about if we do absolutely nothing at the end of the next biennium.
Okay, yeah, we'll have less than $1 million.
We have probably a little bit less than $1 million, right? So we have barely enough, right? Can we survive all the way through the next biennium? So that when I say next biennium, just to be really clear, that's July 1, 2027 through June 30th of 2029, right? So in theory, we could even wait, to the 28 session, 29 session, but then we're really cutting it close. So the idea is we really do need to do something in 27, but the issue is we don't really need it to be effective right away. We don't need it to be in effect immediately at the end of the session. We don't need it to be in effect right on January 1, but we can choose that option. We can choose option 1, which is no special effective date, which means the whole thing kicks in on January 1, 2028, right? Or we can choose what is that option there, the middle one?
The middle one is the second year of the biennium, so midway through the next biennium.
So midway through the next biennium is essentially the second column, right?
Which may be the best option for us.
Yeah.
But this gives something for Shelley to go back and Sherry to go back and look and ask, does this make sense to us?
Okay. And that also means that if you use the kind of the mid-range option, right, which doesn't have to be July, it could be October or whatever, whatever it is, it would allow from a messaging standpoint, and I forget who asked the question, from a messaging standpoint, it can address the issue of, well, sure, we're talking about fee increases now, but you're talking about a fee increase that wouldn't take place until 2028 sometime, which is literally, 13 years after the last fee increase. And I think people do understand that you can't just hold on to your existing fees for that long.
And if you look at the inflationary index, we're right about there. We're kind of just like, okay, this is kind of where we should be at with a little bit extra, so we don't have to ask for, And these are rough numbers. So.
I was just going to ask about firm registration. Have we seen that decrease yet because of some of these firms that are merging Like, I feel like that number might start to decrease.
It might, and we could be getting rid. My fear is we're going to be going through a very large inflationary process over the next 5 years, and that 55 will not cover it. Martin will retire, and we'll have to ask for fees again. So
Why can't we tag it to CPI?
we can. It's one of those things where you're asking legislation to automatically approve your fee increases, and they don't like to do that. They like to hold on to stuff. So people with the purse strings, you're saying, hey, we want to automatically raise our fees without coming back to you again, and they don't really like that.
Be nice. That's essentially what we're talking about, is potentially with the help of industry, right? If they, that's obviously pending their discussions at their board meetings, is to do two things on the industry side. One is to write a new fee into where we currently have the fee amounts for the active CPA renewal and the firm renewal. And the second piece is exactly what you're talking about, is additional language that would then say something like after point X in time, like after whatever, after whatever, January 1 of 2030, the board has the authority to increase these amounts further tied to some CPI index, right? And that gets a little complicated in terms of how that gets written. I've asked Angie for help on that stuff to make sure that whatever it is can pass legal muster, because that's hurdle one. And then hurdle two, Jason just brought up. Then if we get it legally right, it still has to pass the policy test of, is the legislature willing to sign off on a construct that doesn't tie us to a specific fee amount, but allows us to, it gives us by statute the authority to increase fees by rule, essentially because we have statutory authority to keep increasing them within the cap set by statute. Right? There's two moving parts to this.
Mm-hmm.
If you set something like that out far enough into the future, it gives legislation the option of the next biennial period canceling that. So sometimes it's easier to pass. But again, we have to act now in doing that. We can't wait to try and do it later on in the future. Yeah. And that process, and I hate to say this, it's all about relationships. Yeah. And of the two executive directors I've been with since I've been on the board, Martin has the best relationship with those people across the street. So.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I just see, this is pretty tough. Like for my people, they would freak out if they had to pay this themselves. They don't. Our firm pays it on their behalf. But it's just from like a PR perspective, right? I could see like, oh, thanks, Oregon Board of Accountancy. You made it easier for people to become CPAs. And then you just checked on 150% increase to my fee to be a CPA. So it's just, so it's just like a sizable, it's a tough spot to be in.
I also worry about the people in industry, because a lot of times in industry, they have to pay themselves. They're paying themselves. Yeah. And so is there going to be potentially a disincentive to be a CPA, right? To hold the active anyway. Mm-hmm. So then are they going to move to that inactive status?
Mm-hmm.
That's why we want the LSCA to go and talk to their members and see what kind of feedback they get. It's a good starting point, at least in my opinion. Yeah.
Does this take into account any projection of estimating how many CPAs we get on an annual basis?
No, we flatlined it. Said this is
who we have.
Yeah. This is.
Although theoretically, with the changing rule, we should get more. That's the hope.
Yes.
Maybe not right away, but
right.
Full transparency. What's in our budget when we do our our revenue projection and our narrative explanation is actually a balancing of what you just said, Megan, which is, hey, we've done all these things that should bring people into the pipeline, and yet we also know that we have a demographics picture that is not in our favor, right? Which is true around the country, so that we have a lot of aging CPAs. A lot of aging CPAs, right? And so essentially what we do from a budgetary perspective, which aligns with what Jason just said, is saying we are proceeding on an assumption that the positive that we've done with respect to getting people into the pipeline will be counterweight to some extent by the demographics piece. We have actually had an astoundingly stable run all the way back to about roughly 2011, 2012, with respect to staying level, pretty level with our licensee base, right? We have not dropped off. We have not been growing. You know, we keep thinking that we're going to drop off at some point, but we've always done enough countervailing. And actually just yesterday, even though I embarrassingly missed the follow-up meeting, but I did actually work with NASBA in the run-up to all of this, because we don't see the exact numbers in our exam pipeline right now, because they're processing our exam application status. So I asked them to send me the numbers, actually just in the last few days, right? I wanted to see how are we doing with the Oregon CPA pipeline? Like how many people are we getting, you know, now that NASBA is processing, are we seeing any changes? And it's staying remarkable. It's right around the number that I had hoped to see, which is about, on average, 30 to 40 a month that are coming in to the exam pipeline, right? Which is pretty much the volume that we've had for a while, maybe a little bit better, right? But we're not seeing a drop off, you know, and we see, quite frankly, the numbers on the student side, Logan can probably talk about this a little bit more, are up, right? So there is a lot of indicators that we should be doing better, but I'm not sure I'm there that from a budgetary conservative perspective, that we can assume an actual increase in numbers, because there are some countervailing risk factors.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, we've even seen, like, it used to be an expectation of, even if you don't want to be a partner at a CPA firm, that you still want to get your CPA license to take with you when you go. And we don't see as much interest in our staff in getting the CPA. So I think part of that is that.
So taking that, you know, you talk about what we see coming in, and just saying that people going out is balances, and you stay at that average.
So beyond Martin's expectation and his explanation of this, I like to keep things simple. So I'm just saying, if everything stayed the same, here's where you're going to end up. It just makes it easier to explain. And it's a lot more succinct.
But the question I have is, what is one of the risks in the CPA world, in the people holding CPAs? What is the risk of increasing the fee? I mean, are they going to say, I'm not going to renew now because it's
look back on your career and was the fee that you paid the Oregon Board of Accountancy the deciding factor for you keeping your license or not? I've never, and there's been multiple times where I've had a CPA firm pay for my CPA license, or an agency pay for it, and I've had to pay for it myself too, many years. That was not ever a deciding factor. Now, I can't say the same for other certifications I've had. So, but that was, the CPA license was my bread and butter. That was the thing I held out as my badge, and look what I earned. So that has never been a $255. I don't know. $400. I still don't think it's going to affect CPAs today. So
for coming in,
yeah,
I could see that. But the current CPAs, the people that are here now, I think they're going to pay it. They'll complain like I'm going to complain.
Yeah,
you know, I'm complaining about everything. My software goes up, everything goes up. But I pay it because I want to stay in business. I want to stay in industry, and I'm you know, just want to be viable in my business.
Will it be a factor for the new people coming in? Yeah, I think it will be.
It will, but a lot of them work for CPA firms.
Yeah,
out of the gate.
And you're looking at I think a small portion of the people that have already dedicated years of education to be in that spot. It's like, okay, the $400, the $400. My time and money is worth way more than that. I've already put all that energy into getting to this spot. I don't know. I don't think it's gonna be that big of a factor. Now, if we raise it to $1,000, yeah.
Is there like some way that we could explain, like on the website or something, just explain how we got, because I think if you understand, we haven't raised our fees since this, and if you look at the increase of CPI over the course of those 15 years, this is in line with what, just so that we could have a place to send people if they're
to fund into the future. Here, we're talking about what is it, as Jason put it, what is it it's going to take to maintain current state? We're not asking for, we're trying to ask for current state plus funding other initiatives. In 2015, that was different. It was about, we haven't had one for a long time, and we're trying to fund essentially an upstaffing around our compliance operations. We're not doing that this time.
And those components are really important to remember because it's not just apples to apples.
Yeah. So I think what would be most helpful here, and Sharon, I'm going to look at both you and Jared here in terms of level of specificity necessary for OSCPA, and then if Brittany's here and kind of also for OAIA to have a conversation, right? Does this give you enough of a starting point for that discussion on June 30th? Do we need more specificity on input in terms of where the board is at, in terms of from the board side, the preference would be to have fee increase sooner rather than later? I'm trying to figure that out because part of it is about direction to.
Yeah, so let's get I would like to see what the board's opinion is on where we should land that fee increase. Does everybody agree that we should have a fee increase, or are we okay going into the future or not?
I think we need to.
Okay, so we're all agreed on that. The other piece is, do we want the beginning of this next biennium coming up, the middle way, or at the very end of it?
Which comes up, when does it start?
So the next biennium starts July 1st, 2027. So it's not too far away, about a year. But we would probably propose, because it's usually nicer if we say, we'll do it in March of 2028, which will pick up that first part of the season, renewals.
Yeah.
Or we would do it afterwards at the beginning of 2029 or end of 2028 to pick up the last half of the biennium. That's the mid-mark piece. Or you're going to wait until July 1st, 2029 and do it after this next biennial end.
That's cutting it close. That's give a certainty, but you cut it close.
I think the middle option, that's G, right?
Yeah.
Column G.
Correct.
And that's the March 2028.
That's the March 2028 option.
I agree. That's what I read too.
Yeah, if the board's on board with that, I'll be honest, I want to drive the discussion, but that's my preferred option because it puts us out the longest. It strengthens the argument that there's a significant distance between a fall 2025 $1 million transfer, and then it's a pretty long distance from there to a fee increase in March of 2028. So that helps us on the messaging side. And I don't think we really need it sooner than that. And so I think that will be, and from a ease of operations standpoint, right? Being able to do a fee increase round, because we're going to have to do the commensurate side on the rules side. So we do it all at once, at one point in time, right? That's the easiest time to do it because it's not firm renewal season. It's not individual renewal season. We're not hitting the season. It's really clear that this is the new set of fees. And then 2 months later, we open up renewal season and we have a new fee regime in place. That's the easiest one from my perspective.
We also need to keep in mind too, like how it will interplay if depending upon how the statute is written. If it's a must, right? Then I don't think then you're required to go through the DAS process. But if it is a shall, then you probably will have to go through the DAS process.
In terms of ratification,
yeah.
On the rules side, yes, that's a whole other something. But that's internal baseball that I don't think plays into the board direction right now, which is just about when do you want to have this effective.
But that it plays into the fact of like how quickly could it happen?
No. because it's all retroactive. DAS doesn't have to approve it ahead of time. It's all about.
The 333 process?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's a retroactive people blessing process.
Okay.
What I would request is a copy of the spreadsheet, like a final look at the numbers, just to make sure, because
It's a ratification process.
this was a lot of work to put together very quickly, so like to make sure that, you know, like that big picture of, oh, is there anything else that was kind of waiting out there? Like a summarization, you know, I mean, where you and I have the history, a few other people in the room have pieces of the history, but having a summary, a commentary of what this has looked like over time, what it meant before. It doesn't have to be long, you know, but something so we're all on the exact same page. And so, like, you know, we're not missing sharing some key pieces before some audiences and remembering before others. You know, it's hard to get 20 points out exactly if somebody asks a question, you might forget one. So I'm just thinking about those components. Last time, you know, we had the 2 mini auditors sit down with the treasurer and walk through things. So I'm not saying we need to do that this time, but I'm just saying that was the history before that people don't know.
Well, I'm assuming you're going to find out a lot more at your board meeting on June 30th around what it is that they need to get into the comfort zone.
Well, we need that to be on the.
Yeah, I think we have a summary from what Martin's already put out there for me to be enlightened. I think we already have a summary of the past history.
Yeah, and Jared already has that. Yes.
Yeah, so we can recreate that
document that you can hand out.
It was the super high level. Here's where we're going to end up if we do nothing, right?
Yeah.
So I would say there's other parts of the story that are not contained in that overview that relate to history that are helpful for folks.
Okay. Yeah.
Because to Lauren's point, I mean, like my peers around the country said, what? The society is advancing a bill for the board? I mean, it was a shock.
It's still talked about.
Well, it is, and I mean, we have to remember, not everybody's necessarily on page, even if we say, hey, the board's gonna have a shortfall in the budget, we don't do something. I mean, to Megan used the right word, proactive. So.
Yeah.
So Jason, I think we got an answer on the timing preference.
Yeah.
For the board. What else do we need? I think do we need to have a specific discussion around, is this outlined numbers wise within the comfort zone or something else? Because I think the other thing is like, is that the amount that we want to send over for OSCPA and OAIA? And this is kind of where we're at the beginning of the process. It's not a.
Well, so I would keep it at 55% and see what the board says over there at OSCPA.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say is draw. I mean, I think that we want there to be opportunity for them to draw their own conclusion.
Yeah.
As well.
Hey, Jared, is there anything that you wanted to say? No.
Maybe this is like the auditor, I'm sure it is, but like what would be helpful for me to have, like, to understand this as a member is like what your assumptions are in your budget, right? Which is like, we think it's going to stay flat and you can keep it sort of high level, and how that increase relates to CPI over that same time period.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Shelley, the assumptions we've made to the 27-29 budget, we need to outline those. So
yeah,
shouldn't be difficult to put that together at all. You know, we can.
I mean, quite frankly, we're going to have.
When I created the spreadsheet and literally like 95% of it was incorrect.
No, not this spreadsheet, but we did for the budgetary, and Martin may have more of it underneath his hat for the 27-29 budget when we submitted that to DAS.
It's probably both too. It's probably also the assumptions here, the flat number of kind of consensus, things like that as well.
I can help with all that.
Because I think too, just that demonstration of thoughtfulness. It wasn't just like, we need more money. Here we go. You know, like,
what's wrong with that? Like kids do to me all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
So I can help with fleshing that out. I think what I'm hearing here, Jason, and from the group is that we're okay with essentially sticking to the scenario you outlined here in terms of the level of fee increase, as long as we flesh it out a little bit with the assumptions behind in there that we want to at least open up the conversation with, right?
Yes, but the last piece that I sent to you guys had the historical tab on it.
Yes.
We need to add that back in.
Oh, okay.
So that's going to help with the discussion.
Is that the 2015?
That is the spreadsheet that I found, dusted off.
I'll just, I will.
Yeah, and sent to me and said, hey, we need to do this again.
From 2015.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that folks can kind of see the histories, like here's what happened in 2015, we were there, and then we did that.
Yeah.
Right. So that there's a little bit more of that historical perspective, which doesn't prevent you from adding the other pieces that aren't there. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and then we'll make a separate tab with assumptions made for our.
Yes. Now, full disclosure, I also need direction on something else. And this is where it gets a little noodly state process wise. So one of the things that I've also done with Haley's blessing is that because there is no certainty that industry will actually step up and introduce this, whether it's the fee bill plus the CPI index or whatever language or anything at all, right? I had to put in essentially what's in budget language called a placeholder budget package and a placeholder legislative request for us to do all of this agency side, because we need to have some vehicle, right? Because if the industry thing goes sideways, we still need to do something, right? So it's a little bit about, if you will, it's the backup plan. And in essence, what's becoming clear to me is that we're going to need to keep that backup plan going, because the moment I pull that backup plan, whether it's in June or in October or before the session, then we have to know that there is another ship that's actually going to sail and enter the legislative process. So what that means is I need to add additional detail to that backup, which is super high level right now. It's basically an empty shell that I have sitting in the DAS system for this. And so I need there to be at least transparency or direction, whichever way, that I'm going to have to, because this is going to be part of the agent. I need to keep it part of the agency request budget for us to essentially have the option for us to still run this as an agency-based fee increase and to use these numbers that you've seen on the screen with the March 2028 effective date. So essentially, I need that direction saying board understands that I essentially need to keep that other vehicle inside that state process alive using these numbers for the March 2028 effective date. I just want there to be transparency in that it's not meant as a lack of appreciation. It's simply a backup for if the industry stuff doesn't happen, we need to have safety. We need to have a ship that we can still sail on.
Chase Robinson, so moved. I think we should support Martin in that piece and have that backup plan ready to go.
I think you guys should probably do two motions. One, a motion to request that this goes to them, right? So that there's some sort of record.
To submit,
right? And we don't know
that this proposal will go with CPA and OAIA.
Right, and then do a second motion to also let you do your. You can probably stop.
Quinn, you can put on the spreadsheet.
Because I don't know if Logan's been.
If he had had his hand raised, it would have.
Oh, okay, would have showed up. Okay, yeah. After the motion.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
Perfect.
Jason Orr moves that we provide this information to our professional stakeholders for their review.
Thank you.
Jason Robinson on second.
Great. Any discussion? All right, we'll take a roll call vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, motion passes. Do we need a second one?
Yeah.
Okay. Then you can.
Oh, am I, okay, yeah. So, I make a motion that we allow the executive director to move forward with, putting these numbers and the initial, request to legislation, as a backup plan.
Jason Orr, my second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Great, let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, I.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orr, my.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, motion passes. Thanks, you guys. Great conversation. We're gonna, let's take like a 5-minute, 6-minute little break. And then we will come back and resume with 8B. Oh, okay. Blah, blah, blah. We are back in session at 10:25. So it's 11 minutes and not 6, but for the room, or for the record, Megan Hartley has stepped out, and so everyone else though is remains. So we are moving on to board work session item E. Request from Ms. Cynthia Killingsworth to adjust 24 semester hour upper division accounting requirement to include some additional options. So Martin, do you want to kick that off? And
Yeah, so Cynthia contacted us relatively shortly, if I recall, after the January board meeting, the late January board meeting, to say, hey, could I make a formal request for the board to consider a proposal to essentially change the education requirements in what we often refer to shorthand as the accounting specific upper division accounting bucket. But I noticed that Cynthia is actually here, which is really awesome, because I'm sure that she can talk a lot more eloquently than I, and it will also give you a break from my voice. So I don't know, Madam Chair, if you want to just call on Cynthia to talk
Cynthia,
about.
do you mind just sharing your comments that you email us about?
Yes, I wasn't expecting to talk. I was just going to come and listen. So thank you.
I mean, you don't have to, but we'd love to hear from you if you're interested. If you're
do
willing.
my best. My thoughts about this kind of go way, way back. Washington State has, I don't know how long, has allowed 9 semester hours of lower division coursework. So it was basically recognizing the principles of accounting series as meeting the accounting specific coursework. And some other states have done some work along the lines. I didn't look at every state. I kind of looked at the West Coast, and California allows certain specific courses from certain community colleges, and Texas has another way of going about it. But the idea is that some lower division coursework is being allowed to meet those requirements. And I had some time to think about it even more after I sent that request, and thinking about it for years of what that means for our students. What it means for a lot of my students is when they're wanting to, they're wanting to maybe combine degrees. And I was thinking about our information systems and control specialization for the CPA exam. And I see more students saying, I'd like to bring in more information systems. Maybe I would even like to be an information systems major, and then do the accounting coursework and sit for the CPA exam. And I'm telling those students, go take the exam in another state right now, because they can get a little bit more credit flexibility in both California or Washington. Specifically, Washington will give them more flexibility. So I just thought I would bring this up with the state of Oregon and see if you would be interested in exploring this and seeing how it could work in Oregon.
Martin, I don't know. I have not looked at what Washington or California particularly allow. And so do you know? That kind of, Martin, I'm asking you, do you know what they allow? I'm wondering if like our 24 upper division, we sort of call them upper division, if that 24 credits becomes 24 plus 9, or does it be like in Washington, is it 24 plus 9, or do they not have any sort of set parameter around what they require in that same way?
So full disclosure, while I haven't looked at at Washington, California specifically, I think the first starting point is to acknowledge that jurisdictions are not unified with respect to these education requirements leading up to, qualifications to sit for the exam or qualifications to licensure. So folks are all over the place, and quite frankly, more than you would imagine. I think there's still a jurisdiction out there that, for example, just to give you an idea of the level of diversity, that simply has a number of accounting courses and no specificity whatsoever around upper division versus lower division. Now, that's not a recommendation. That's simply to make the point about how diverse we are. That said, I think when I look back at the history of how the board has approached these issues, right? One of the themes that has come up time and again in our rules intensive phase that we started back in 2022 is that the board said one of the things that we value is alignment with other jurisdictions whenever the board deems appropriate. That was not an absolute, right? But that's one of the things we want to look to. That said, what we also have specific on this issue, at least up until the point that we had this request from Cynthia coming in, is, hey, we don't really want to tinker with our education requirements while we're changing our pathways too much. So in some ways, and I don't mean that critically, Cynthia, I had wished that we had had this conversation while we were working on the bill and the rules to implement the bill, because it's now a little bit more, it's a little bit of a different animal, but I did just recheck our statutes, right? It is a conversation that can be had without a legislative trip. Okay, so it is something that we have the authority to, I didn't see any language at the level of statute that specifies that this second bucket has to be upper division. So there is ability from my perspective that all that specificity that we're talking about here does sit in rule. The issue really is, do we want to change course? Do we want to open up that conversation? If the board wants to open up this conversation based on Cynthia, I want to just respectfully say, I don't think, at least initially, that there will be unity in higher education around, whenever you start changing the education requirements, we're going to have to bring the education stakeholders to the table and try to figure out kind of like, where do we thread the needle that makes everybody happy? Because I'm not sure, and this is not meant to be either supportive or critical of, just very neutrally stated, I don't think right now, if I were to bring the higher education stakeholders into a room to discuss the issue that Cynthia is raising, that there would be unity on this issue. I think it would take a little while for us to get there. Is that a fair statement, Cynthia? Yeah, okay. She's on mute, but I see her shaking her head.
Agreed.
Yeah. So it would take some work for us if we open up that bucket.
So I think the ask is, does the board have an appetite for maybe referring this matter to the LRC or to kind of explore this a little bit or not? Is that correct?
Yep, that's certainly one of the options where we can park this.
Madam Chair, I was the one who got that assignment a few years ago.
Right.
And I'm just putting history out.
Please, thank you.
And Cynthia, my son got his 2 years with PCC and then went on to PSU and had his degree through PSU. And working on the exam now. So I understand what you're asking. When we went through this with the Laws and Rules Committee for both the legislation and the rewrite on the rules to present to the board, we had the conversation about the accounting bucket. And we left it with upper division or graduate level after some discussion. So just know that it wasn't a leave behind. There was discussion and thought behind that. I'm not saying that we need to leave it there if the board wants to go a different direction. But within the last couple of years, when we talked about it, we did determine, leave it as upper division and graduate. It wasn't a long discussion, but there was discussion.
Yeah, I think that I have I think when I have thought about it, it was kind of like, well, if they're getting an accounting degree, they're getting that anyway. And so it sort of felt like there was better alignment by calling it upper division. But I can understand from maybe, if somebody went back to school to try to get the coursework, that there is an element of value in these courses that are being offered that are not labeled upper division, that you could get through PCC or Lane or whoever. And there may be some. I mean, I certainly have an interest in taking a look at it kind of through that lens. But I don't know what I think the outcome is, but I want to hear what everybody thinks.
Hey, I had 2 recent calls just to that point where people talk about performance.
Okay.
So probably meeting the business and accounting courses. This is only from memory. I think, Martin, that when you were here, the first time with LRC, there's some place in minutes where we were discussing specific courses. I'm sure you probably remember too. So, okay. Thank you.
Logan.
If I may, clarifying question actually for Cynthia. Would the community colleges be able to designate these kinds of courses 300 level? Is that feasible?
I don't think we have that control.
Okay.
I think that there's a lot of the upper division is held by the universities. And so that is a very difficult area to navigate. We have courses that are pretty much identical between the 200 level and the 300 level. And yet a community college can only offer it at the 200 level. And then we have accounting students having to retake it again at the 300 level. It's not the ideal situation. And I hope that can improve in the future. But it's not something that's going to change in the near future.
Okay. And that's a big motivating factor, is that inequity. Same kind of learning objectives, but because there's limitations with community colleges, they can't call it an upper division course. So that's motivating to me to look into this more.
Lucas, may I ask you if you know off the top of your head, and maybe Cynthia, you know that as well. Are we talking about a set of courses where there is a lack of consistency inside higher education as to whether they are, even though the content is very similar, as to whether they're considered 200 level versus 300 level? Is that part of what's going on here?
I would be reluctant to dive into that realm and instead decide if you wanted to go the Washington route, which you just say a certain number of credits, or that would be the easier route to take. And also that would offer more flexibility to the non-traditional students that maybe were trying to combine accounting with computer information systems, credits for things like that. So that's certainly a more flexible option, and then would also keep you out of issues in the Higher Education Coordinating Committee.
Logan, did you have anything on that front?
Yeah, I mean, some of these courses that Cynthia included in her document actually are ones that could I have to look at learning objectives, but could be considered like computer accounting applications, accounting information systems. That's typically our division. So that's a key aspect of this is treating essentially the same courses differently because of which institution is delivering them. Yeah.
So kind of what I'm hearing is a little bit of a yes, it's right on that.
Yeah.
Right on that edge.
Mhm. What I struggle a little bit with is how we, what the easier sort of, what the easier path is, I don't know. In terms of how we sweep some of these in without sweeping things we don't necessarily want to sweep in. I don't know.
Yeah, Cynthia mentioned just having just like Washington, it sounds like this. With just you can have some lower division coursework and it counts towards your core accounting requirement. And that would be very easy. And then also that would work for both community college and university students in their early years.
Right.
The underlying consequence though is we're essentially lowering our bar in terms of the core accounting coursework is effectively reduced by that X credits we accept because students currently can't count those and they have to do 36 upper division courses. So it is consequential for how you look at the rigorousness of our requirements for students.
So the core question still remains exactly the one that you asked, right? Do we have an appetite to delve into this, kick this over to the LRC for some kick the tires, figure out if there's a brilliant idea coming out how to navigate that, or do you want to hold off on that?
I'm not hearing a lot of resounding, like, we've got to tackle this. But correct me if I'm reading the room correctly.
I'm not opposed to looking at it.
I think from a prioritization of LRC, I think it's probably a later in the year ask. Let's put it on can we revisit on our September board meeting so that we can figure out where it lands on the kind of LRC docket of items?
Visit in September, LRC docket. Okay, because basically what I'm hearing here is based on the earlier conversation, the priority is for the LRC to work through that document that we got from TASC and prioritize that working.
And I anticipate that we may have something back from Peak on a second exposure draft potentially.
That quickly?
I don't know. So I want to save a little bit of space for that, but I think a later 2026, I would like to formally say like, okay, is there a way that we can make this work or not, Jason?
For the LRC, because I think this would be better served getting the educational community together and getting their opinions and biases and where the things should lie.
Okay.
We have somebody on the LRC that is equipped to do that. Two of them, too.
Ray and Liz.
Oh, true. Yeah. But is it the function of the LRC
to determine the worthiness?
Yeah.
It's like you got to write the policy and
exactly. So I think another committee would be like, okay, bringing that opinion back to the board and the board saying LRC would change the rule.
Right.
So
maybe an ad hoc.
It might be an ad hoc. We need to bring like the higher ed community together to discuss it.
Yeah. Makes sense. Tanya, we're going to see something.
Yeah, it looks like Washington State changed their law in September 2025. They don't have that rule anymore. It doesn't look like.
They don't have what rule?
The 9 credit hours.
Oh, really? Okay, I will check it.
It looks like they actually just changed it, so it's not like upper division at all.
It's not upper division.
It's like just so many accounting classes. So, but it looks like they changed it. It says that it was voted on October 17th.
They took out the upper and lower
Yes.
distinction.
Oh, yeah. And
Because
there's
I continue to allow them, it's just not distinguished in such way.
Yeah,
More.
yeah. So just an FYI, it looks like they actually changed it to even.
who are removing the
Correct.
distinction upper and lower.
And I would specify that I would not use California as an example because they have the different pathways. They have people that have CPAs that can't do
Right, they have
test
student
work.
licenses.
They have, so I personally would prefer not to use them in our example because their stuff is way different than ours. They're not a good mirror image.
California being California.
Just as a guess, something that Cynthia mentioned that really caught my attention, and it reminded me of when we were going through the changes with the essay, because students were going to Washington.
Yeah.
To sit for the exam, so.
We want to keep people here.
Yeah, I'm just, as a guest, again, just getting my perspective, but, you know, that was a problem that we were having at that point, really hit my radar, you know.
Keep that thought in mind when we move on to the next agenda item.
I appreciate that one.
So maybe Martin, you and I can maybe collaborate on how we can get like an ad hoc meeting together of some of our higher education stakeholders.
Yeah.
To determine what that would look like or not look like from a change standpoint.
And my request would be that if Cynthia, if you would like to be on that, we would love to have your opinion on that.
I will actually be retiring. On it, could find someone from Portland Community College that could represent Community College.
Certainly. Yeah.
Congratulations, but no, I'm so sad.
It sounds like Cynthia's gonna have time though.
There you go.
Well, I appreciate your consideration of this and thank you for all.
bringing it up.
Thank you.
Hey, Cynthia, before you sign off, can I just do a little bit of a shout out and also publicly thank you during the board meeting for all your help on the pipeline committee, the scholarship one. You were a phenomenal contributor.
Yeah.
It was a wonderful committee and an honor to be part of it and to see the results that it's bringing to our accounting community already. It was very inspiring. Thank you.
Right.
Thank you. You're of course welcome to stay, but if you sign off, we don't blame you. Okay, we're moving on to F, eligibility requirements to sit for the CPA exam, which sounds like a big topic. But it's really related to like the timing of when students get their information that they've completed enough hours and when they can register to sit for the exam. Logan, do you want to just do a quick overview of this topic?
Yes. So transparency, we discovered this at OSU when we were trying to offer a CPA prep course right after graduating. And we had all these grand schemes of students taking the CPA exam right at the end of that, which would be about a month after they graduate. And then we learned more about the timeline and essentially they'd be lucky to get one section in before the end of summer with the timeline. And so that got me thinking about what other states are doing and what we could do. And there's maybe if we're interested in permitting students to take the exam earlier and digression, there's good reason to do this. I think CPA exam pass rates are higher the earlier you take them.
Yeah.
And many students start their careers in the fall, so they have this kind of magic window to maybe knock out 2 sections. So it could be very valuable there. So back to it. If we want to consider doing something to help, I talked briefly to Martin. It seems like there might be 2 possibilities. There could be something we're changing our process, maybe not even our rules. I don't know, but just changing our process of approving students to sit, where we could do that quicker. Maybe we don't require their final transcript showing they're graduated, something like that. Now, other states actually have more, of a high degree of early taking ability. There's 8 or 9 states that let you sit within 90-ish days of graduating, so you can sit a little bit early. And there's even Alaska, which many students are going to. We've heard of this, of our students actually going to Alaska board to get approval to take their, to sit. And that can be when they're within 18 credits of graduating. So pretty, pretty generous.
In theory, it's like that, but after their fall term potentially of maybe their last year.
Yep.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the farthest anyone's gone that I can tell. But there's some big states that do this. I think New York's one of them, where it's like 90-day before you graduate kind of thing. So I'm curious if people want to consider that. I think it would be good for the pipeline, good for the students. So I would encourage us to consider something.
It feels like extremely low stakes, low risk, but in the face.
I think our statute prohibits it.
Well, hang on a second. So there is, I knew that she was gonna say this.
Yeah.
Just before council first.
Okay.
Can we separate two buckets here? Because one bucket might be in for a cold shower bath and the other one may not. The issue here is, I think what I would like to take on, because it sounds like based on Haley's comment and what Logan just said, there is one portion of this that, from my perspective, is clearly within the statutory authority. Maybe we might have to do some tweaks in the rule, but at least within statutory authority, because one part of this is about students who have the degree, right? Who essentially they've walked already, their parents are still giddy because they watched their student walk across the stage. They've met all the education requirements, right? But it takes sometimes 2 months before that actually shows up on the formal transcript. So there is essentially that part of the window that's very much on my radar that appears to be strictly within the requirements, the educational requirements that we have sitting in statute and rule, and we're really dealing with what level of documentation is required at our processor end at NASBA to demonstrate that fact, that it's already done, right? So that's one part of the conversation. And I think that's the part of the conversation where hopefully, and I'm certainly going to be transparent with board council, it's really more about what our degrees of freedom are in terms of them demonstrating that they have met the requirements that are sitting in statute and rule, right? So that we don't needlessly delay them. The second piece that Logan brought up is not as simple, right? So when you're talking about the examples of, can we emulate state A and say, could we give them access to the exam within 6 weeks or 2 months or 3 months or XYZ courses, right? That's the part that's a little dicier, where Angie is right that we have to look very closely at how far could we go down this road if there is interest by the board without having to do a trip back to the legislature, right? Are there things we can do by rule that's within our rulemaking authority, or do we need to do something in statute to actually kind of go further down that road of allowing people to sit a little earlier? That's, I think, to me, a different bucket. Not saying that I want to discourage us from it, but that is a different bucket, because that's the one where it will be absolutely necessary for us to understand what the degree of authority is that we have on that end of the equation. So with respect to that, could I simply ask, just to we can speed this up, is the board on board, unintended, with me taking on the first bucket, which is what can we do within existing statute and rule to kind of speed up the processing on the NASBA side and document I have what I have done, I've completed my stuff, which I know is not all you're asking for, Logan, but it's at least one part of it, right? And then
does anybody not support that piece? Great. Yes,
Okay.
support.
So we can do that, and then I was told I should delegate more, shall we? So the second piece is, how do you want to handle piece two, which is where we're really talking about exploration of how far can we go with respect to statutory authority, or what would we need to change in the statute and rule level to allow people to sit sooner, right? Does the board want to tackle that work? And if yes, what's on the board's mind? Like, are we talking?
Isn't this for LRC? Sounds like a rule of evaluation.
Yeah, but low totem pole.
Yeah.
Yeah, agreed.
So.
Okay. So yes to LRC, but lower totem pole. Okay.
I think it's great. Thanks, Logan.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah, agreed.
Also, for the record, Nathan Hartley has come back into the meeting.
Well, thanks, everybody. Thanks for considering it.
I would pretend if we actually didn't leave. All right, thanks, guys. Yeah. Woo. We are on to new business. Thank you for that great work session. You just want to jump in?
Yeah, Ray with that. Did you send that to Ray?
Because I can really keep this going fast. So you have this awe-inspiring title of Senate Bill 1552, Required Rule Implementation. The keyword here is required. Because in essence, this is one of those rare times where something is sitting in your packet that's rule related that never made a trip through LRC. And what you really have in there, with the exception of the fee amount that I negotiated with DAS, is that the rules that you have there are written by council. And all of this is really essentially a consequence of a bill that passed, I believe, the 2024 legislative session, when we were in the midst of being very, very, very busy doing other things. And in essence, what that bill did was it required regulatory boards. People mostly talked about health regulatory boards, but the way it was written is that it impacted boards a lot more broadly beyond the health regulatory board scheme, and basically said, you need to set up a process where you have the option for folks that think about potentially wanting to apply for licensure in the future to get some kind of an answer that they call a predetermination, if they have a criminal background, to see if that criminal background will prevent them from getting licensed, right? It's a policy decision that was made for the boards by the legislature. There is no policy choice here. We have to implement this. Council simply helped us here. So there's two things that happened. One is we were simply way too busy with our own stuff, and I won't apologize for it, to tag this onto all the other rule work we were doing. We just didn't have the oxygen, right? But it's now time to catch up. We're not the only board that's a little bit late to the party here, so we don't look super bad on this issue. But it also, quite frankly, allowed us to simply talk to council and say, hey, could you please take the work that DOJ has already done advising all these other boards and write for us what it is we need to do? Because there's really no choice here. We got to get this done. And really the only option that I had was to negotiate with DAS how much work I would need to do to figure out kind of what the rule, what the fee amount would be for someone who would actually apply for such a predetermination. I think the volume for us will be exceptionally low. You don't know that for sure. That fee is kind of set mid-range between where boards have fallen. There are some that have set fees for that process closer to $50 to $75. 75 is, I think, like probably where most are at. There's others who are going up to 150. Since I know I probably will discuss every single one of these cases with council, I put it at $100, which gives me about 3 minutes with Angie. Sorry, I just had to slide that in the cartoon. So that's kind of where we are. I'm happy to take questions. But I'm sorry to say, it's not really one of those things that's super optional for us because the legislature has basically directed us to do this. And Jason, for the record, we might have to add about $200 to the spreadsheet you expended earlier. This-
Round up or round down? Always up.
Yeah, that's not what I just.
So we need a motion to authorize rulemaking.
Please.
I make a motion to authorize rulemaking. Jason Robinson.
Jason Orm seconds.
Any discussion on this? Great, let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. You are authorized.
Okay. And speaking of my need to delegate more.
Okay, withdrawal of notice in board case
Okay, right.
24-019, Jeremiah.
Hey, how's it going? So a withdrawal of notice, we had previously discussed a case. The board voted on June 5th, 2025 for sufficient evidence for a number of violations. After an attempt to settle didn't go anywhere, we executed a notice of intent to impose civil penalties. And a response was due back from the respondent by March 3rd. But the notice came back to us that he was deceased on, I found that he was deceased on February 28th. So I would like to request that the board withdraw this notice.
Great. We need a motion to withdraw notice 24-019.
So moved. Jason Robinson.
Okay.
Megan Hartley, second.
Any discussion on this matter?
You broke the pattern.
Yes. That's good.
Jason made me.
All right, let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Great, thank you. Okay, debts owed to the board and recommendation for write-off. Still with you, I think, Jeremiah.
Indeed. Okay, so in this document, I've included a copy of the debt collection policy because there's some people that may not be familiar with our debt collection policy. But basically, when we have a debt that becomes delinquent, we send it to Department of Revenue's other agency accounts unit, and they handle the collections. If they cannot make a collection within 6 months, they send it to a private collection firm. If that one can't collect within a year, OAA sends it to a second one, who then also has a year. If no one gets payment during that 2.5 years, OAA changes it on our aging report to say recommended for write-off. We use OAA, one, because we are required to, but also because we don't have the resources to have a robust collections process here. So there's no functional ability to do more than they have done in the 2.5 years and 3 agencies that it goes through. So I have included a list of debts that are currently recommended for write-off. And would recommend that you approve them for write-off.
Many of them still have licenses.
That is a good point. One of them still has a license. It is in lapsed status.
Does that cause?
No, it doesn't change. I was just thinking you might want to revoke that person, but that's, could be a different. Okay, different discussion. Okay.
One of the debts, the person is now deceased.
Oh.
They were recommended for write-off until they were deceased. So this would be written off under a different checkbox on the list, but still would be your write-off.
Great.
I like that they're following this process. A lot of agencies were out of compliance for a while with the collection process, doing the wrong thing. So it's good that we have this at Department of Revenue. I would make a motion to write those accounts as listed off. Jason Robinson.
Jason Orm, second.
Any further discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffat, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rama Libya, aye.
Logan Steele, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Item off. Okay, I feel like we've had lots of voting today already.
Oh, yeah, we're knocking it out. You're
That's
doing
right.
great.
Okay, correspondence from Linford and Company.
So folks, what you're looking at here in your packets is something that happens somewhat rarely. But essentially what you're looking at is correspondence from a public accounting firm that was sent to boards around the country. So this isn't specifically Oregon directed, but essentially correspondence has been going out across the country from simply a public accounting firm really concerned about what it calls the commoditization of trust, and really focusing on what's going on in what they call the high growth compliance automation space, and kind of admonishing regulatory boards to be more firm with boards that are taking, in their words, and I paraphrase, the AICPA Code of Ethics or Code of Professional Standards as a suggestion rather than a framework. So it's a little bit of a, how should I say this, kind of an admonishment, a little bit of a venting letter, expressing concern letter that regulatory boards like us are not doing enough with respect to the trends in the industry. So when we get letters like this, the minimum obligation that I feel as an executive director is to make sure that the board sees it and is aware of it, because it's essentially feedback from the public, in this case, the public accounting firm public, that they're concerned about a trend and that not enough is being done about it. It doesn't require us to respond, right? That's really up to the board, but the first step is to be transparent that this type of communication was received. It's not the type of communication, even though, in 99% of cases, correspondence that comes to the board is answered by staff. This is not the kind of thing that you can do at the staff level. You have to bring it to the board and say, hey, we got this feedback. This is about our broader regulatory function. Here's the concern that's in it. What does the board want to do with it?
And this topic was also brought up at the April board meeting, NASBA board meeting.
Yes.
Just so everyone's aware that, was it really because of this?
I don't
think so either. It's just, I think it just indicates that, you can go out on Fiverr and get a SOC 2 audit for $150. And
really?
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, it's, are people that are, claiming that they can do certain, audit work, tax work, at very, very, very low prices, which will erode public trust and all of the things. So I don't think that we need to do anything. It's more just like, okay, there's this thing that's out there and we need to keep an eye on it. And that was kind of the takeaway at the board meeting, NASBA board meeting as well, of like,
yeah,
let's see how this potentially plays out a little bit longer.
There are a few jurisdictions that are already finding some of those actors where there are concerns and cases about essentially SOC 2 audits getting issued at high volumes that look very similar to each other. And so there are some jurisdictions that are already doing some work in that space. But Oregon being a little bit smaller, I don't think that we have anything specific right now on our docket, on our radar screen, in terms of this type of activity in Oregon. But I usually share this stuff with staff. We have, weekly compliance meetings, and on occasion, they will have to listen to me bringing up these topics. And make sure that there's awareness. around what we're seeing. But Jeremiah, I think we can confirm in public session that we don't have cases of this type right now. Correct.
Great. You want to keep it rolling with the update from Daz?
Yep, and that's the rest of these items can be super fast unless there are questions. So one is that I simply coincidentally got a reminder email from Daz regarding the training requirements for new board members, and quite frankly, sometimes board members that maybe even have been on here for a while may not have fully caught up with stuff. So please make sure that you are set up with your Workday profiles and log in and see what your requirements are, because essentially Workday should ping you in terms of what your training requirements are. And simply, it was my way of simply saying, if you haven't checked your Workday account, or if you're not aware, here's number one, a written piece of paper before you even get to your Workday account that shows you here's what the requirements are and how you can link up with them. We're certainly happy to also have an offline conversation with you. And if you have troubles with your Workday account or getting in there, then Shelley has become, I think, more proficient now over time to kind of help interplay with some of the technical difficulties that sometimes board members have in terms of getting their Workday stuff up and running.
Or at least throwing in with them in frustration.
Yes, there is that. So it's just an FYI. There's nothing for you to do other than a simple request of please make sure you pay attention to this, because on occasion, doesn't happen very often, but on occasion there are folks in DAS and the governor's office that check, and they will knock on your door and on my door and saying, hey, how come you have board members that are not, doing that training by the required deadline? So please pay attention to this. Any questions? And then we simply have two of the usual, well, not one of them is not usual, but we coincidentally had specific CPA performance examination update document come out in May from the BOE and AICPA. So that's in your materials. That's in your materials. And I also threw into the materials the latest quarterly report we have from the first quarter from NASPA around CPA exam results. So I just like having those in the official materials, so you all kind of always have the latest of what's going on exam side. Any questions around those? Okay. All right. Well, then let's keep going if you don't mind. I'm gonna just keep trucking with all business. Yep. And then there's just two FYI items on here. One is thank you again for coming together at a special board meeting to allow us to timely submit the board's response to the peak exposure draft on APS-PE. I wanted to make sure you saw the final version, so that's in your packets. And I simply want to add on to that a little bit of a success story, which is that there was a tremendous amount of effort around the country, which I'm also proud of. We didn't have to really worry about this board because we were going to comment, and we've been working really hard on it. But there was a huge effort because it looked really ugly for a while that we were going to have very, very few boards responding. Many of them felt overwhelmed or kind of like, this is so complex, we don't have the capacity to do this. And there was really a huge lift with really NASPA in the lead and NASPA staff helping to a great degree. And I certainly threw it out there at the executive director's level in the monthly calls that I'm running for my colleagues around the country. And there was really a lot of infrastructure deployed. And we ended up having, I think, over 30 responses from the regulatory side going into that AICPA process, back into that AICPA process. Initially, it looked like we may not get above 7. So, and we were really worried about this because silence, if you don't respond, gets interpreted as, oh, we're really great. And, we think this is the best, this is the best thing. And so there was at least at minimum success in the sense that the regulatory community really came together and responded. It doesn't mean that they all responded the same way. There is some diversity amongst those responses, but that's secondary. What's really, really important is that regulators weighed in, and from what I could tell from the last AICPA peak committee that happened just a few weeks ago, is that that message came across very loud and clear, that AICPA essentially acknowledged publicly we have a lot more work to do on this exposure draft, right? So, which is why I think you were the one who brought it up earlier, Haley, that we might already have some. I think it will take them longer to get. That's just my.
I think I
best
have
take.
wishful thinking.
Just to make their way through the volume of these responses, right? And I think that's actually a good thing. I think that's a healthy process. So I'm actually really encouraged by this.
Madam Chair, I turned to Sherry McPherson for her memory. We were both at AICPA Council 2 weeks ago. I think that was 2 weeks ago. And they mentioned this. And my impression from that wasn't, oh, we had 30 responses from regulatory boards. It's going to take us a long time to sift this out. It was more of a, yeah, we issued it. We got some responses. It'll be okay. That's what I came away with.
I kind of came up with the same interpretation.
So it sounds like, depending upon who's talking, we're different messages.
Well, I would think it would be tricky for me if I put a deliverable out there and I got several responses that said, wow, you really missed the point on this, to come back out later and be like, yeah, people really didn't like it.
True, but that's how you gain trust.
I know.
So just, I wanted to share that and make sure that I had not misinterpreted. It was very brief,
It was extremely.
but that was what I understood. So this is very interesting. That Peak has said, wow, we've got some work to do here. Great.
I was expecting some maybe conversation in the room.
Yeah.
I'm trying to remember what the.
I don't feel like I can go much further in a public hearing.
Nope. And that's fine. I just wanted to mention it from another public meeting, what was said.
And then just a tiny bit of context on item 10B. It's information only, but also transparency. Unfortunately, after the board meeting, even though this has been going on for a while, where we completed the work at the last board meeting on the updates to the delegation of authority document, right? DAS raised some concerns that there was one issue that wasn't, in their view, adequately addressed, right? So I worked with board counsel on taking that feedback, which then generated essentially me executing a document roughly a week or two ago that you have in your packet that basically much more explicitly further delegates authority to Shelley if I'm incapacitated, because that was really the core concern that DAS CHRO had, because they essentially made an argument that it wasn't quite worded in a way that they felt that Shelley would have that authority if I am not around. And so I worked with, they would have preferred to update the document itself. And on advice of counsel, we didn't go down that road and instead executed an additional delegation document. That's what you have in your packet. So there's nothing that deviates from the board's direction in here with respect to what you did back on January 29th at that board meeting, but it simply is meant to be transparent with you that we have that feedback loop with DAS, and that's why I executed that additional document to ensure that, I don't like using HR terms, so I like using simple kind of jarring terms like the truck test, like something really bad happens, right? If something really bad happens, if I get hit by a truck or I accidentally eat a few hazelnuts, that Shelley has the ability to run things and that the documents are properly executed, that things can keep on trucking. So that's really what this is about. That's the context. You can't see just the document itself. That's the why that's in your packet. Madam Chair, I think we're done with 10.
We are.
We are.
I have a question
Yeah.
for Jeremiah.
Yeah.
We have people appearing at,
Yes, appearing.
at starting around 12:20 or 12?
12.
Okay, so I propose we move on to item 14. And work through that until 11:45. And then in theory, lunch will be here. We can grab lunch and we can dive into executive session that way. Or we can start with settlement proposals. No, that's what I thought, but then I was like, are we skipping? All right. Okay, so report. The governor has, we have submitted the renomination of Raul to the board, was submitted to the Senate. So that's great. We are recruiting for future board members. Do you have any comments about future board members?
Yeah, just we need to make sure that we have a pool of folks that the governor's office can consider. So if you have thoughts around this, because we know that Jason is going to roll off with, I forget exactly when your end date is, but it's at the end of this year, right?
December 31st.
December 31st.
Wow.
I'm counting the voting.
Yeah, my term is also up December 31st of 2026, and I could re-up for an additional 3 years. I am not going to do that, but I will stay on until replaced. I go where Jason goes. And so we're recruiting for a couple of spots.
And that, just to be really clear, process-wise, this is not something.
And I need assistance.
Where here's what's really important about this. The process of getting a new board member in place is a very lengthy process, because first we have to find people to put into the pool. Then that pool has to be considered by the governor's office. And then that pool has to go to the Senate for confirmation. So it's an almost like, if you look at the timelines of this, it's a 6 to 9 months process, depending on when you do this, right? So we don't have as much time as it may look like, right? Because really, ideally by the next board meeting, no later than the next board meeting, ideally sooner, right? I would love to get suggestions for folks that we can consider pulling into the pipeline. Obviously, also have conversations with our associations around this stuff, because associations also like to be kind of involved at the table, because anybody can submit stuff to the governor's office. It doesn't have to come from us.
Yeah.
Right. Somebody can self-nominate and apply to the governor's office. It can come through an association. It can come from us. Right. But we've been pretty blessed that in this state, and especially lately under the latest set of governors, there's been a far more transparent and inclusive process at the governor's office stage in terms of us knowing who's actually applied and them asking for our opinion regarding people in the pool, which isn't always the case. It's the governor's process, and it's completely up to any given governor as to what information they share, what they don't share, what opinions they solicit. So we have very much a great relationship, and would love to, make sure we have folks in the pool.
What would you like from any potential candidates? A letter of interest only? Interest in a resume?
Actually, neither, because that could get me in real trouble. Because it could make it look like we're trying to be the antechamber of applications when it's really the governor's process, right? It would look like we're vetting candidates when it's really for them to vet candidates. But it would.
What would they ask for then?
I'm sorry?
What would they ask for?
Resume.
They ask for, there's an online process that you have to go through, and they ask for everything from, your biographical stuff and brief statement of interest. I think there's questions about criminal background, that kind of stuff. I think even basic questions like, are you registered to vote? That kind of stuff. might be in there, so.
I don't remember that. I don't remember that one there. Yeah, it's just like basic demographic information and such
Basic
as well.
demographic.
Mhm. And then a resume provided if you get past that point, I think.
You two should be the freshest one from the governor's office side, so. I haven't yet tried to apply this.
Over like a 2-year period though, so like, I don't know.
Do you want us to point people towards that application rather than running it through you? Do you want, how do you want
I
that to
think
work?
if you have people that you think would be good candidates, you could, and, you know, if you've had any sort of chat with them about that, if they have questions, you can direct them to us.
The way we normally do that is we kind of essentially, we split the baby a little. We say, hey, if you want to know more about what it's like to be a board member and kind of what it's like to serve, right, specific to this board, that's the conversation that we can have, right? And then we can kind of like suss all that out. And then we say, the application itself, though, is with the governor's office, and there, this is where you need to go. But usually people have questions before they're willing to go there. And those questions are easier answered on our end than on the governor's office end, because they tend to be very board specific about how often do you meet and what it's like to be a board member and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And that's quite frankly, if a board member is having that conversation, you're welcome to have that directly because you sit on the board, you have something to say. Right. But if it's really just, hey, I haven't connected with this person, but this person is somebody you should talk to. The you could be a Haley conversation, could be a me conversation.
Yep.
Right. Then we can call this person saying, hey, your name has been given to us by so-and-so. Right. That you might be willing to apply to the governor's office for this appointment. You know, are you, you know, can we talk about this? Can we fill in some blanks about what it's like to be a board member?
Could they serve solely remotely on Zoom?
So I'm going to say short answer. So far, we've always had board meetings and have a Zoom option. So that, I think the short answer is yes, but I'm going to give you an asterisk. The key here is that I have not seen governor's offices before that are willing to countenance folks that are not residents of the state. So they need to be still inside Oregon.
He would be a resident, the man I'm thinking of, but to get to Salem's going to be
a bit.
Yep. So yes, but Oregon resident also yes.
Yes. Okay. Perfect. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, if we're going by the governor's ask, it's all regions of the, so.
Yeah, right. Great, yeah, if you have names, throw them out to partner and we can help. Reach out, help with the outreach.
So basically we need to not find somebody, so you have to stay longer or that. Oh, that was supposed to be an idea.
Yes. Now the reports. The April board meeting happened, and I feel like we've talked about it, but I don't think we've had a board meeting. Have we had a board meeting? Okay. Do you remember the April board meeting?
Well, I have one thing that I want to say about and it's a little bit more my personal perspective, but the thing that really stood out to me at the April board meeting that was unexpected and very heartwarming, if you will, and positive, is that there were actually several moments at that board meeting that acknowledged how far at the national level NASBA has come kind of into much more of an equilibrium, overcoming tensions that have been there historically between NASBA and especially the executive directors, right? So there were two things that happened at the NASBA board meeting. One is that it was the first time the board met after the March conference, right? And the March executive directors conference, which was quite frankly, I'll just do my executive directors report portion on this. The March executive directors conference was extremely well received, right? It was much more deep divey, much more in-depth, a lot more interactions in terms of the setups and the tables and the depth of the conversations, the depth of the work sessions we had there. There was just a phenomenally good feedback. But inside that feedback was a specific substrain that also came back up at the April NASPA board meeting, which is that NASPA very directly and openly acknowledged that it was a sea change in terms of essentially much more collaboration and peace, where there had been so much tension between NASPA and executive directors for a whole variety of reasons in the past, right? And it was actually Dan Dustin, the CEO of NASPA, that reported out, and that's when it clicked for me, is that he was absolutely shocked that when he went into this traditional last session of the conference, where Dan goes into the closed room, where it's just him and the executive directors, that not only did we take the entire time, which is usually very brief and very little is said, we take the entire time having conversations about current issues, right? That at the end, when he stepped out, that there was applause. And he was completely shocked by that, because there was no precedent for this, because with all the tensions that have been going on, right? So I just want to report out something positive and something that I also feel good about, because it is happening, at a time when I'm really trying to do a lot on my own end to kind of keep communication going, keep collaboration going, head issues off at the pass early. There are some really positive things happening, not just substantively, but also just in terms of tonnage. And it's not coincidental that you heard a report earlier in this board meeting about, for example, the really great response to the peak exposure draft, right? Because that was in part a consequence of executive directors and NASPA and everybody working far better together than has been historically been the case. So that's kind of like my take on the April board meeting.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. It was one of the, it was a pretty mild board meeting from the standpoint of there wasn't some big contentious issue that had to get sort of hashed out, or, what's our stance on this, or what about that? There's still continued efforts and work happening at the NASPA level around the strategic plan and what that's looking like, and all of the input and stakeholders that are participating in that is impressive. So that is great. The regional directors were at that point, of course, finishing up the plans for the regional meetings, which are coming up. And that's great. From the Pacific region standpoint, everybody's kind of working through the same things, implementations of any of their statute or rule changes. There has been lots of discussion about the exposure draft. So now that we've kind of have the exposure draft behind us, I'll be curious to hear from all of the Pacific region at the Western region. Tanya was appointed to the Audit Standards Board. Hey, Tanya. So Oregon is making waves nationally in a lot of areas, which is awesome. And then Jason was fully called into action for the NASPA nominating committee, which in my editorial opinion is the most important committee of all of the NASPA committees, because it's choosing the future leadership of the organization. So I think that's really great that we have Oregon representation there as well. And with that, there is a whole bunch of opportunities to sign up for NASPA committees or express your interest, or I am not rerunning for Pacific Regional Director for NASPA. So if anybody wants to do that, feel free. And all those pieces. So several of us will be at the Western Regionals. Several of us. Who's all going? Jerry.
And I think, Jason, you're going, right? Yep. Because you're on the nominating.
Because yes,
Yes.
he's on the nominating committee.
I thought I was supposed to be there.
Are you on both?
Huh?
Are you on both?
I was told.
You are. Yeah.
He's not answering that question, Drew.
Yeah, yes. He was totally supposed to be there.
Yeah.
Yes.
I will be a vote.
Everyone could be like, oh, nominating committee, bow down. It's very, yep, be prepared.
Oh, yeah, and so my first thing with the nomination committee, so Brian stepped down just recently and we got to vote for the vice chair. And so I got called to duty right before that. I got to.
You were the alternative.
Yeah, I was the alternative. And I got to go to Texas where they had a party and everybody knew each other because they had been working with each other for the past 2 years. And so I was the new person that they were waiting on and my flight got delayed. So I got to go to the dinner that had started at 6:30. I made it there by 7 and everybody was still milling around drinking and getting to know each other that they already known. And so everybody, when I walked in, they all turned their attention to me and I was like, ooh.
It's here. And then were they like, Oregon? Ooh.
Stuff out there.
Yeah, all kinds of questions. Why is Martin the way he is? And
I know Martin, do you know Haley? Yeah. Right, yeah, there was a conversation at the board meeting of like, you know, people that will then apply for the nominating thing, and they're like, oh, we haven't heard from Jason Robinson, and I was like, let me just email him. Hold on. It's like, I'd like to go through this for like a second, figure it out. It was like, oh, you can just email him? I'm like, yeah. Same board, like for many moons. So that will be great. Okay, committee, have I appointed anybody to a committee lately?
Not since all your reports at the April.
That's okay, good. That's what I thought. But I was not sure. Okay, we have 10 minutes. Let's move on to Rob. Report of the vice chair. Great. You have no report? Is that what you said?
Yeah, not as chair.
Great. Okay, Jason.
Treasury report. If you guys have seen the treasury report and everything, it's a brief piece or anything. Martin and I get to go over a larger thing that looks at all the details in our finances, but we are in a situation where we are losing money, but to reasonable things, like we just gave $1 million away to a scholarship. So otherwise, we are doing really well as a board. And we look forward to that fee increase discussion with the OSCPA. So
Again, as a reminder, the $1 million, the reason we did that is because it could have been scooped up.
that is the potential that I don't know how comfortable I feel saying that.
Okay.
But yes, that is a potential possibility that could have happened. But we are giving back to the community in a place where we need to at this time. That's the bigger issue that I like to say. Is that
So let me respond to this piece for a minute, right? So even if you take the swipe thing off the table, I think, I'm trying to remember if it was Raul or Haley next to me in our last budget hearing. Trying to remember who I had with me at the board level. But we were told very, very specifically at that time that actually, that was actually the prior one where you were with me. At the prior one, already in 23, it was like, Martin, what are you going to do about the excess ending balance, right? They stopped just short of, not necessarily a swipe, but they stopped just short of writing us a legislative note that say, thou must do something to reduce your ending balance, right? Because we were getting into that territory where we were way out of line with the measurements that they use in the Ways and Means process. Right. And so we were getting on the radar. Right. And so we knew we had to do something. And then we decided we needed to do something because they asked us to do something. And then, you know, the easiest way to address it was essentially the stuff that we had started discussing at the February 2023 board meeting already. Right. Which is, hey, Martin, hey, board, would you like Martin to work on the scholarship? And to develop that piece, right? That started in February of 23.
which the good thing that we're going to do came before we were going to lose the money conversation.
Yeah.
Like I say, I like to present it as we proposed to do a good thing for the community. Oh, and by the way, we could have lost it in the.
Or in the infamous words of one of the committee members, it appears you may have better ideas of what to do with your money than the ones we might come up with.
Maybe. Thank you, Jason. Do you, Martin, want to do your executive director update? Is it lengthy?
No, it's not at all. I simply want to add because we already covered the NASDAQ board piece, right? So I'm not going to repeat that. What I do want to just also say is, you already know a lot about what's going on. The newsletter is out. So as part of my report, I simply want to share one thing that supplements what Sherry reported out earlier around the OSCPA Circle of Excellence Award, because there's actually an event that happened that I want to just talk about for a quick second today. And that is, I know we had a session earlier that we can't discuss now because it was an executive session, but just bring that into that overall context, right? One of the things that I'm super proud of is, in addition to all the other things we've talked about that I do, is that a fair amount of what I do isn't just policy stuff at the big, level, whether it's for Oregon or Washington, but some of my most enjoyable work is either going into classrooms or doing individual level advocacy, where people come to me and say, here's this really difficult case. Here's this person who's taking an unusual journey toward licensure. I have this piece. And just want to share one thing. There's a gentleman who walked up to me at the Circle of Excellence event. And basically turned into an incredibly moving conversation. He walked up with his significant other and reminded me of his case. And it turned out I had worked with this gentleman originally back in 2014 and I don't want to say the name for obvious reasons, because this gentleman had a criminal background issue that had come up as part of the application to sit for the CPA exam, right? Mm-hmm. And I worked with him through some pretty difficult territory back then. And it turned out that this person was ready to actually have the licensing related conversations at the point in time when I was back as executive director for the board. So I kind of re-engaged with him personally and made sure that he was going to hang on and kind of do the little bit more difficult path of kind of moving all the way through. And he showed up at that meeting as a freshly licensed CPA. And it was a conversation of, you changed my life. I couldn't have done this without you, right? Because there was some really, really personal advocacy that literally stretched almost a decade of making sure that this guy could make it through the system. And I can't tell you how much that meant to me. That was just absolutely huge to kind of see that. And it's quite frankly, of all the things that I do, I'm just as proud of that as I am about all the other pieces, because that's the stuff I absolutely live for, is that I can just, engage and just make sure that these really difficult anomaly cases get the attention that they need, that they feel like they have a direct line to the top, that they're not dealing with some 800 number or generic something, that they feel like we care and we get them through the system. So I just want to put that in my report for today, because that I'm really, really proud of.
Thank you. Good, Shelley. Okay, so mine's pretty short too. I just wanted to give some stats updates. So you may recall that we are proposing 2 new licensing KPMs, and I wanted to report how we're doing on those. The first KPM is that we will review all initial license applications within 10 business days of receipt. Our target that we're hoping for is that we do that 85% of the time. For the time frame of March 1 to May 28th, we did this 92.6% of the time.
Yeah.
Great. So we're hitting that one on all cylinders. And then licensing KPM 2, this is where we say initial license issuance occurs within 3 business days of final approval of the initial license application. Our target on this is 90%, the same time frame. There's a caveat. First, I'll say the result is 94%. The main caveat, I want you to know that in the background, I need more training with staff because the information in our work in progress spreadsheet isn't always being filled for me to have the full picture. So out of a total of 41 applications, there were some of them that just weren't completely filled out for me to be able to evaluate. But in terms of, hopefully that does answer some questions of, are these KPMs something that are, appropriate, achievable, et cetera? It would appear just based on this data. I think that they are. Okay. CPE audits are almost concluded. We have 319 of 333 complete as of this morning. And then CPA renewal is in full swing. So far, we've done 481 renewals, and we expect to do about 3,500 or so. So
people submit their renewals before June 30th.
Well, actually, it's funny you should say that. There has been a bit of a process change because our staff has matured enough that we can do certain things a little bit differently. And so we used to wait until pretty much renewal season, everybody was processed through, for example, to actually send people out their cards and kind of the final confirmation. Now, Shelley has changed this with staff to kind of a much more rolling process.
Sure.
Right, where folks that are coming through and that are processed know that they're done and they get their cards in the mail. And I think that will lead to some pretty significantly positive feedback because people know what's going on and they're getting their beloved ID cards from us that they literally call them ID cards because they can serve as a form of ID and they love those. And so Shelley's done a lot to improve that process already.
And the staff too is, the staff said, this idea of let's do all the approvals and entry in the FileMaker and then later do that. So I give a lot of credit to the staff. That too.
Great.
That it? That's it.
Okay. I keep going actually, because we essentially have 2 more items and then everything else is a voting thing. Finance Committee, Raul.
All right, I can continue?
You may.
All right.
Thank you.
Yeah, I just want to attest to the fact that the BOAC is just not an 800 number because everyone gets, the point I want to make is that we did a lot of closures. There was a lot of closures and a lot of straight to boards last time. And short of it being making the meeting go quicker, I just want to just give a shout out to the members that there is a lot of good discussion that goes on. And also to make the point that there's a lot of people out there working with a lapse license. It's like chronic.
Yeah.
And that makes it a little easier. I mean, the circumstances are discussed and some of them are quite comical, but it's the point that they do exist. And the board just doesn't, shove them aside. The committee just doesn't shove them aside. They give them their due diligence from what I'm seeing. But in my opinion, in these ones that are being closed and coming in, they're being rightly decided. But I just want to point out the fact that there's a lot of these lapsed issues happening. Yeah, why it's happening. But anyway, they plow through them, and I think they do a very, very good job.
Thank you. Megan, Peer Review Oversight Committee.
I don't think there was anything specific to bring to the board in my recollection.
You had the meeting.
I did.
They're jumping on all cylinders. They're great.
Okay, we are going to take about we're going to take about a 10-minute break. And I'll say the things in a minute, and then we will resume in executive session. So I am now adjourning the public session of the board to enter our second executive session under authority of ORS 192.660 paren 2, paren F, paren H, Consideration of records exempt state of Oregon Board of Accountancy. I'm now calling the public session of the Board of Accountancy back to order. It is Thursday, June 4th, 2026, and the time is 1:53 p.m. There has been a change in those attending public session, so I will do a new roll call to establish attendance, starting with those present in the board office, followed by those on Zoom.
Shelley Ostrom, Deputy Director.
Megan Hartley, board member.
Jeremiah Leopard, board staff.
Tanya Moffett, Board Member.
Jason Robinson, board treasurer.
Jason Orm, board member.
Angie Hunt, board legal counsel.
Raul Valdivia, vice chair.
Martin Piccioni, Executive Director.
Wade Stoddard, board staff.
Sherry McPherson, guest with CPA staff.
Brittany.
Hi, Brittany Hornung, OAIA board member.
Thank you. Mr. Hare? Yes,
Yep, I'm present. John Hare.
thank you. Mr. Posey? Yes?
You're on mute.
Yep. I can do it. I'm acknowledging for the record that that Mr. Posey is here on Zoom. I think that works. Great. Okay, we are on item 12 of the public agenda. Motions on cases heard in executive session. Do we have any motions?
I would like to, Jason Robinson, I would like to make a motion for case 25-018 for sufficient evidence of OAR 801-010-030, Pren 2 lapse license for practicing public accountancy with a lapse license.
I will second that motion.
State your name.
Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote. Starting with Megan.
Megan Hartley, board member.
Nope, aye.
Oh, sorry, aye, sorry.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Been a long day. Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Thank you. Motion carries.
Don't worry. I make a motion for case 25-024 for sufficient evidence of OAR 801-030-0010 Pren 4 tax standards and OAR 801-030-0005 Pren 2 Pren E integrity and objectivity.
I second this motion. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes.
Jason Robinson will make a motion for case 25-025 for closing without further action.
I second this. Tanya Moffett.
Great. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Great. Motion passes.
You didn't vote.
Haley Lyons, aye. I am passing the motion.
It has been a long day.
It has been a day.
We're gonna get through this.
We are. Okay.
I make a motion for case 25-026 for sufficient evidence of OAR 801-010-0030 Pren 1 due professional care.
I second this motion. Tanya Moffett.
Great. Any discussion? Okay, let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes.
For case number 25-028, I make a motion for sufficient evidence and OAR 801-010-0030 Pren 1 due professional care and OAR 801-030-0020 Pren B or Pren 8 Pren B board communication and investigations.
I second this motion. Tanya Moffett.
Great. Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Raul Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes.
I, Jason Robinson, make a motion for cases 2025 inquiries, or student study cases, inquiries 25 or 2025-INQ-043, 2025 INQ-051, 2, 3, and 6. Thank you, Dan. 2025 inquiry 061, 2, 3, and 4 to close, no further action.
I second this. Tanya Moffett.
Thank you. Any discussion? Take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Any additional motions?
Is there a motion in agency case 14-052 to release Mr. Hall from the probationary terms imposed in the settlement agreements related to agency case 14-052?
Jason Robinson, so moved.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. The board also reviewed agency inquiry 2025 INQ-037 and took no action. Noted for the record. We have any additional motions from executive session? No. Okay. All right, moving on to consideration of settlement proposals. Jeremiah?
We have two proposals. We have settlement for investigation 25013 for due care and board communications, 1,000 in penalties, 1,000 in costs, stay 500 in penalty and 1,000 in costs for a net of 500 payable. Would you like to hear?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the second settlement is for investigation 25017 for practicing while lapsed. We have 1,000 in penalties, 1,000 in costs, stay 500 in penalties, and 1,000 in costs for a net payable of $500.
Okay, so I need a motion to approve and adopt the settlement agreement in board cases 2025-013 and 2025-017.
Jason Robinson, so moved.
Thank you.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Great. Any discussion? Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. All right, we covered a whole bunch of things before that executive session, so we are down to item 20, ratification requests. CPA certificates, municipal audit roster, and firm registrations.
Jason Robinson, I make a motion to accept the CPA municipal audits and firm registrations as presented.
Tanya Moffett, second.
Great. Any discussion? Need for new CPAs and new firm registrations and municipal audit people. Let's take a vote.
Megan Hartley, aye.
Tanya Moffett, aye.
Jason Robinson, aye.
Jason Orm, aye.
Rob Valdivia, aye.
Haley Lyons, aye. Motion passes. Before we close out the meeting, do we have anything for the good of the order? No. All right. Our next regular board meeting will be on Thursday, September 24th, 2026, 8:30 a.m. I am now adjourning the June 4th, 2026 public meeting of the Board of Accountancy. The time is now 2:02 p.m. Staff, please end the recording. Thank you everyone for your participation today.